I will call to order the Middleton Affordable Housing Trust meeting of Wednesday, April 2nd. It is 6:06 p.m. Just a reminder for those in the room, this meeting is being recorded. We did not have a meeting in March. Thanks, everybody, for being able to move with the flow on that, as we had canceled that meeting. So we had some items that we were going to talk about then that we'll bring to today's item meeting. But what we do have is minutes from the February 5th, 2025 last meeting that we had. And folks should have received this earlier. I don't know if folks have any questions on the minutes.
No, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay,
I'll second that motion.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, if any? And that is unanimous. Okay, we are going to, also just before we move into the agenda, I'd like to give a big thank you to Bill Renaud, who has served as a member of this committee since the early days. Bill has served on other committees in town, has given a lot of his time to the building committee that is, as the chair of it, as we are moving forward in our municipal complex. Bill has also served for some time as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Bill has, unfortunately, due to some time constraints, has had to step back from this board. So letting the public know, as well as this board, that we actually have a vacancy on this board. And as those know, some of the seats on this board are made up of different representatives of different committees. For example, Maria, you're a member of the Housing Authority and a representative. I'm a representative of the Select Board. Rich, a member of the FinCom, and you serve as a member of the...
I believe I was just nominated.
I think he's at large.
I think I'm at large.
No, you're not at large.
I thought he was. No?
I don't believe so, but I may be incorrect. Either way, I would say those that may be interested in serving on this committee, please reach out to the town administrator's office. The select board is the appointing authority of this committee, and
Oh, he's Herman. I'm sorry, could I just interrupt? It says Herman here is Community Preservation Committee.
that's right. You serve as a member of the CPA. Thank you very much.
I just looked at the minutes. You're welcome.
I have a really good memory. It's
Let
just
you know
really,
where you
really
are.
short.
I actually have a meeting on Monday.
So this would be an at-large member, similar to Beth. So any member of the community can serve that is interested. If you have any questions on what it would mean to be a member of this committee or the time commitment and others, again, reach out to the town administrator's office, or feel free to reach out to myself or any member of this committee. We would like to recruit some candidates that can be entertained before an upcoming select board meeting and get us back to full membership.
Brian, will someone, I don't know who handles the website, will that be put on the current openings?
Yeah.
Because a lot of it's...
Yeah, I actually spoke with Jackie today
Okay.
about that, and that's going to be posted there as well.
Great.
But probably something, maybe if candidates emerge, probably in the May timeframe would be appointed, probably not at the next meeting or two in the select board. Want to give it time to marinate and find some candidates. But I'd also say to everybody in this board, if use your recruitment capabilities. If you know a neighbor, friend, somebody in town that you've heard that is interested in expanding our affordable housing capabilities here in Middleton, here's an opportunity to serve. Okay, so we're going to continue to work on not just our 5-year action plan, but we have 2 items today on our agenda. One of them is to talk, we've been talking the past several meetings around an opportunity of developing a grant program, either a grant that would be repaid or possibly a forgivable grant program to support individuals in town that may need needs around mobility or accessibility repairs in their home. We've talked and looked at other examples of other communities. Anna has done a really good job of kind of outlining some draft around the program that I want to talk about. And then secondly, I know, Anna, you've done a really good job of doing a review of our current inventory here in Middleton as it stands today of properties that are determined by either statute or deed restrictions to count towards our inventory of our affordable housing in the community. And we have had some concerns in the past that some may potentially be falling off the list. I think Anna has a better handle both on the inventory and some, I think, some good news around some of the pieces on that inventory.
Yeah, definitely good news on that. So every year we kind of take a closer look at this. I reached out to our contacts in housing and livable communities to verify a couple things, and we do have, there's 2 of our properties that technically are not in perpetuity, but actually have an expiration date on the affordability restriction. What I learned from the state, a little more detail about those, even though the deed restriction has that expiration date, they are actually renewed along with or on the timeline because they receive federal funds. So because they have those federal funds subsidizing part of those on each of those properties, that we actually don't need to be concerned about the expiration date.
But if you look at the list originally, it looks like they're going to be expiring.
Correct.
And I think one of those is the property behind the police station,
Yes.
which is a not insignificant number of units.
Yeah, that's probably the Oak Knoll property.
Yes.
Yeah, yep. So that one, and we have it, I had them update it on our actual form. So now if you look at our subsidizing housing inventory, it says 2027 on that, instead of 2023, I think is what it said before, and then 2025. So that will continue to be extended, likely, after 2027. And then the other property that we had was the Middleton house, 59 North Main, and that one has now been, it's updated to 2045 is the date, and that runs, I think they said on maybe every 5 years.
How many
they would
units is
renew
on that?
There's 11.
Okay.
Yeah. So those 2 things should be staying on counting for us as subsidized housing on our inventory. I've also requested that we add the upcoming development at the Angelica's property, 49 South Main, because we can add that as soon as the permit was approved. Those count.
So we can actually add the units once the permit's approved, not once occupancy is taken?
Correct.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Has he purchased the property yet? Because that hasn't even
I
happened yet.
do not know if, last I checked, the actual
Deeds, registry
deed
of
has
deeds.
not transferred yet, but that was more than a month ago. I don't know where that is in the mix.
I don't think so, from what I've heard. I mean, he was at, what's that? Industrial, blah, blah, blah.
Design Review Committee.
Thank you.
For the property, what would be the portion in front, which is going to be
Right.
the commercial spot.
So he hasn't secured that yet, I guess.
So it was my understanding that, and this was talked about publicly,
Yes.
under a 40B or a 40R, when there are 2 lots that are being developed, one of them commercial, the other one residential, whoever's doing the 40B or the 40R cannot do the commercial as well. So I fully expect once the permits are done on the parcel in front, that's likely going to be sold. And then my understanding is then we'll begin the project in the back. And that's likely when I would expect the deed transition will happen. But the permits are approved already for the 40R, so
Right.
we've got credit for that. Now, whether he develop it or others, I fully expect it's going to be him, but that's good. So once that's updated on our SHI report, what does that give us for, do you have a number of what we have?
Yeah, so that puts us a little over 6%.
And prior to
From-
that, we were
We were at 5.
5.
Yeah.
Just 1%
Yeah,
more.
so that bumps us up 1.
But you also have to remember,
Maybe a little more. I don't have that.
Sounds,
exact-
1 sounds kind of low, no? To be just 1?
I thought we were going to
It might be more.
I thought we were going to be
I thought
knocking
we were
on
gonna be.
like 9%.
That's what I thought, because I remember you talked about that at another one of our meetings in the select
Yeah,
board.
we weren't going to reach.
Let me
Now-
redo my numbers. on
Not
that.
10, but I remember
No,
it being
no.
more than
But just
a
so
point.
folks understand, we
not
are
right.
in safe harbor now. because of the approval of the project, which is a 2-year period, but 2-year period safe harbor really, I mean, we're in it now, but the clock starts ticking once.
Why are we in it now, Brian?
We're in it now because we've approved the project.
Because we've approved
and
the
state's
project,
approved the
and because-
project. And
Okay.
So under safe harbor, that means tomorrow, somebody could not step into Middleton and say,
40B,
I want to do a
okay.
40B.
Gotcha.
And so there's a time limit to the safe harbor,
Mm-hmm.
but even though it's a 2-year time limit, it's probably going to be longer because the clock starts ticking when the building permit is pulled. So that building permit won't be pulled, but probably later this year, but it's not coming tomorrow. So the beauty is, we're going to be sitting in safe harbor for 2 years or more.
Okay.
And so that doesn't mean that there may not be other projects that folks are interested in. I mean, full disclosure, there's been some murmuring in town of an interest of something being done down at the old motel.
Candlelight,
The
yeah.
Candlelight on North Main Street, and other items like that. I think we as a town need to be prepared that there is as the state is promoting very strongly beyond the MBTA zoning, but as the state is promoting very strongly affordable opportunities in the growth in affordable housing, that Middleton and other towns around us will continue to be on the radar screen for developers and other organizations, including not-for-profits, to look for opportunities. So, safe harbor or not, there may be other opportunities that pop up, but at least the next 2 years, maybe longer, probably closer to 2.5, 3, we're not going to deal with an immediate 40B if it shows up at our door.
Okay. Maybe you could let us know, Ann, about that, because it seemed like 1% doesn't seem like, I thought it was going to be a few more than that.
Yeah, I think I was underestimating it a bit. The numbers I'm looking at here bring us to around 7, but I'll make sure that I have the updated numbers.
Yeah, because I thought I remembered almost.
Does the
yeah.
state certify our percentage, or do we self-certify our percentage?
It's sort of a joint,
Okay.
yeah. So they keep all the tally of everything, but they send it to the town each year to review and.
And so, for an understanding of SHI, which is the, basically the list of units that are determined to be affordable, for the edification of those at home and on this board, like, let me give an example, like a group home. There is a group home in Middleton, there are, I'm not going to say where, but if there was a group home in Middleton that has 5 individuals residing at that group home, it may be a 3-bedroom home, but a 5-bedroom group home. How are we counted on the SHI? Are we counted as 5, or does that count as 1?
That counts as 5.
5. So, and if you look at a affordable apartment or condo or home that is a 3-bedroom, that counts as 1. Okay.
Yeah, and it wouldn't change based on, for example, not necessarily a group home, but across the board, it wouldn't change whether all the units were full or not. It's based on the number of units that exist.
And under the 40R that's happening at the former Angelica's site, not every unit there is going to be affordable, but because it's an apartment and not condos, the town gets credit as if every unit is affordable. That's the quirk in the Chapter 40 law. That, I guess, gives a little bit of benefit to a town. I mean, whether it's a 40B or a 40R, we get credit for every unit, not just those that are deemed to be affordable. So that's great news on the SHI, really great news that, at least for one very large property and another one of 11 units, 2 large properties that if they had come off our rolls, we would have plummeted greatly. How do we, does the state track, like if there's another property that becomes or is deemed affordable, or is that something that you have to track and then get the state to confirm?
That's something we're responsible for tracking. We do have, there's some regional supports that would help out with that, but typically that's falls to the town, in a small town. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, any questions on that?
No?
Thank you for that. That's a
I was excited to hear that.
big check box to check off that, at least 11 unit. I mean, I would expect Oak Knoll would stay that way because of the federal funding, but the other units, the 11 that we're talking about, that, that would have been 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, so.
That's been that way for years, from being on the Housing Authority. We've been told many times, that's not going to change.
On Oak Knoll?
Oak Knoll and the other one, it won't change. That will continue to hold that way. That's what I was always told with being on the Housing Authority.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically it's a notation.
Right.
The way we notate it is different.
Correct.
But for our purposes, we shouldn't have to worry about
I'm
those.
pretty sure in perpetuity it will go that way.
Okay.
For our time span here, I guess.
Okay, if there's nothing further on the SHI, thank you, Anna, for that, and your work on that. I want to talk a little bit about the grant program, maybe a pilot, or to determine how we want to kick this off. We've talked about this in different meetings, about the ability to provide some financial assistance to residents in town, that there are some barriers to allowing them to stay in their home and/or the community. As they are aging into, or due to a disability, a need for accessibility in their home. Maybe it's a ramp, maybe it's grab rails, maybe it's other updates that are happening to the property to allow them to safely remain in their home. Anna's done some research looking at other programs that are in place in area towns and communities. You'll see in the draft here, she's talked about like scope of the program, some recommendations or some ideas around eligibility, both on age, both on residency, as well as income limits. There was some discussion about, in the recommendation, and we can move through all of these, but I just want to lay it all out around how we prioritize the populations. She's making some recommendations here around an application process. I know jointly we've also talked about this in the past for some small improvements. I view this as a grant that would not be reimbursable or have to be refunded at any point. But we've also talked about what if it's more than grab bars and handrails or a ramp? What if what's keeping somebody from their ability to stay in their home and stay here in Middleton is a roof that needs to be repaired, or a boiler, or a water heater, or electrical code issues or plumbing code issues that are the barrier for them to be able to remain in town and maybe, quite honestly, remain independent, whether it's in town or not. Now, those would be an more expensive proposition, and we probably don't have the budget yet for that, but in the future we may. But I think we really wanted to try to see if we could step off with more of a smaller range project around accessibility. And then I think we'll talk a little bit about how we could partner with some other programs that are happening in town, the COA, the work that Chief LaCoste and his team are doing right now with the Retire the Fire program, our veterans agent and the work that he's doing with outreach to veterans, and then what program operations would look like, and where and how this is going to be supported both internally within the town and our management team, this board, and then if this program is going to potentially be expanded to something larger, what would that mean in terms of some towns have actually outsourced the programs to groups like Habitat for Humanity and other groups. Now, I don't think we're at that level on a budget. So those are kind of the parameters, but I'll leave it to you, Anna, to kind of walk through this. And what I'm hoping we can get to this evening is some unanimity around what this looks like, so we can turn this draft into a much more concrete final draft of a process. I would really like to see sometime this summer us kick off this program, because I think we're starting to identify some folks in town that I think this program could help.
Is this something that we finalize or we recommend to the select board?
No, this is something we would finalize, because this is utilizing the dollars we have in the charter and the charge that we've been given. Now, you know, we are sitting today, thank you, Rich, with your budget document, about $293,000.
299.
299, sorry. Yeah, you are correct. Probably be a little bit more than that once all of the interest is updated on that. So 299,000, let's call it 300,000. I'm not recommending we do a $275,000 project. We're not going to expend all the dollars, nor do I want to tie it up in a program that if we build it, not enough come. But I also don't want this to be, if somebody has a need and we only have a small amount of money, we can't solve the need.
I sort of like Anna's suggestion, I know she's gonna go through it, but maybe adding these other items, but having the cap of 10,000 per.
Yeah, it could be that. I mean, or we, I think there are other sources that could be braided. I heard clearly that there is VA funds that can be utilized. I will tell you, if an individual is receiving either Medicare or Medicaid in a duly eligible program, health plans sometimes will provide some dollars to support accessibility and other items. So this may not just be the trust funds being the sole braided organization for this. It could be more than that.
I like the suggestion of prioritizing individuals not available for other assistance. And in a similar vein, I would propose removing the age restriction, given that these programs are targeted at affordable housing in general.
Yeah.
As the support for seniors.
I tell you, I would not be opposed to removing the age restriction. I think, to your point, I think we have to give a little bit more thought to how we prioritize the greatest need, because this isn't going to be a one-time grant application, everybody applies and we'll go through this. My opinion, you guys tell me if you think differently, I think this should be a rolling process.
Yep.
As individuals are identified, whether it's through the Council on Aging, whether it's through our friends at the schools that are identifying families that may have need, whether it's our veterans agent, whether it's somebody that stumbles across our website and sees that this program's available, and part of this will be promoting this as well. So I would, I don't want to get,
In that,
yeah, go ahead.
in that case, I think there's probably a initial cohort that's I wouldn't want it to be a race to get the first people, and then I think also talking about what that total budget would be the other piece of that, because when that's up for the year, it's going to be up for the year.
Yeah, so I think we have to provide some seed from our current budget. Now, the committee that you sit on is the Community Preservation Act, is continuing to provide us some regular seed money. Rich, I think we are hoping in the upcoming budget cycle will be another seed of about $80,000 that will likely be coming. That number could change in the future. There may be other factors, dollars coming from the legislature, the amount of properties that have been transferred ownership that bring the tax revenue in. So,
And keep in mind that we were told that in '29, the library ends, and there may be additional dollars come from CPC.
there will be some additional dollars in the general CPA environment. So, maybe, Anna, why don't you kind of walk through this? I think we've all read this, but it's an opportunity to talk about it out loud for the folks at home and others that may want to learn a little bit of kind of how you've you structured this and what you've learned along the way of the research you've done.
Definitely. And I'll say right up front, this is all in draft form. So the reason I wanted to put it together was so we could look at it all together, but it's absolutely, I appreciate the feedback, and I think getting it to where we want it will be a process. So, but I think the idea that I came in with, my understanding from how you all had thought about this, was exactly kind of a program to fill a gap, to fill a need for folks who are facing either an unexpected expense or an expense that they just, it's a safety thing or it's an accessibility thing to be able to stay in their home and to be be there safely. And I wanted to kind of highlight that as like the priority, so that can kind of be our foundation as we're going forward. I'll definitely, I think, conceptualizing it for seniors came out of my conversations. I had a few conversations with the Council on Aging about this, and so definitely that was sort of part of my focus when I was writing this. But we can certainly expand to other folks.
And I think to that point, I mean, when folks think about accessibility, they think about aging in place, but it's not necessarily aging in place only.
Right.
You know, sometimes it's accessibility knows no age.
Yeah.
But understanding that, you know, I'm not a soothsayer, but I would say the likelihood of, it's probably going to be more folks that are,
Well, the average Middleton age will say that it's going to
Yeah.
skew later. I just don't see a reason to.
yeah,
limit
no, I don't
that.
disagree.
Or you just have, you can also, you don't have to have it one fits all. It can be, I see the two things here. It could be one program that's 55 and older and another one for different ages. I mean, it doesn't have to all.
Well, I think having some flexibility,
That's what I
I would
mean.
not want an individual or a family to come before this program and have a need and us say, you know, you don't fit, you may fit on the income limit that we've put in place, but maybe you don't fit in the age limit, or it could be an aging parent or grandparent is living with a child in town, and the need is the aging parent who maybe not be the homeowner, but there's no ability to actually pay for and I think we have to
Yep.
show some flexibility here, and I think after some time of implementing this program,
change it
we
too,
can go
right?
back and
Yeah.
look at if we need to either tighten it up or open the aperture more.
But you don't have
I
to
just
keep
think
it the
about-
same in perpetuity. The first round, you can
Well, I just
start
think-
in a way.
Yeah, I just think about what are the important criteria? Which ones do we actually want to filter on? And would you,
Well, I think, as you
Want
said,
to
the
pick-
age, we kind of know the age, the average age here is higher, you know.
but would you want to not support a family who has a college student moving back in who needs a ramp, but the family is 50
The
and not
college student
55?
needs a ramp?
Well, the family that owns the house is 55 or whatever,
Yeah.
or is 50 and wouldn't qualify under this. Or a family who has a child who needs more mobility support than their home supports, would we want to not support that because we're prioritizing using those dollars for older people?
I know sometimes it's hard to cover everything, so that's why doing what I do for a living with grants, I mean, you can't encapsulate everything. So sometimes I think since this is, I mean, of course, this is a discussion, but sometimes I think it's a good way to start off small in some ways, or to focus on one group perhaps, and see how that goes for that first round, and then maybe expand later. I think if we, I don't know, it's a way to look at it. I just
is.
don't want to make it so broad.
What about instead of thinking age, I mean, you've got a recommendation here.
With the disability
of,
veterans and such.
Of an income level, and you
Yeah.
recommended following the HUD income limits, which are very clear and is a process, when you talk about affordable housing, is a numeration process that everybody
Correct.
clearly understands. So sitting at this, looking at Essex County and looking at 80% of the adjusted median income, that means here for Essex County in 2024, a household size would have a income limit of one would have an income limit of 91,400, all the way up to a family of six with 161,900. I mean, I think the parameters should first settle on
Income.
income.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say about that too, I appreciate you bringing that in because I think, especially at this point, you know, I haven't done a lot of community research to find out what the exact needs are and who might be the first people. Like, if we're going to put this out, which I don't recommend we start like that, but if we were, we would probably get a lot of different responses. And I think it might be, we might be getting ahead of ourselves to kind of like put too many guardrails before we actually understand
Yeah.
the need. So
That's what I was saying.
yeah,
I just
appreciate
feel
that.
like I'd be afraid that it would just be too overwhelming, like a small focus, just to get us feet wet, get our feet wet, as they say.
Well, I don't see why we would choose to focus only on old people then.
So go ahead.
I have a viewpoint on that, in the sense that it's not that we're restricting young people. You're looking at sort of impact, right? The elderly face a greater risk of losing their home because it's not safe to live in. And when you equate that with somebody who needs a ramp, they will still have access to that home. And maybe what we do is we say, look, we look at people who might lose their home, their ability to live in Middleton. And is that something that we want to put as a first priority? So income level, yes. But then, are you going to be able to stay in your home for your next 6 to 12 months? And if the answer is no, you get priority. Because the priority is keeping people in their homes. And it doesn't necessarily mean they have to be a senior. It's just the senior at a greater risk.
Or the priority, in addition to that, isn't just keeping them in their homes, the ability to return to a home.
Yes.
Now, there are individuals that have maybe been hospitalized, they're in a rehab setting, and sometimes coming home, looking at activities of daily living, which will determine their ability to be home. But sometimes the barrier is
To come home.
getting in the home and being safe at home.
Yes, absolutely.
So, but, I don't know, maybe I am looking at this at that. I think we're gonna get interest in this, and we're gonna get applications. I personally don't think we're gonna get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So, what I think I'm kind of leaning more towards what you're saying, Beth, is I want some flexibility here, but I think we can give priority around parameters, but have some flexibility of, and maybe the priority is around, is if you'd like a ramp to have more accessibility, but the ramp for this situation is the ability of somebody to come home.
Correct.
From where they are, or if not, in 6 months, they're not going to be here and able to live in their home anymore, and is either going to be living somewhere else or in a long-term care setting or whatever the case is. The reality is we're not talking about a huge amount of money here, but for somebody that needs it, this is a huge amount of money.
Sure.
So I don't want to limit the ability, but if we get overwhelmed, there's nothing that says we can't come back and pull back on the reins in a way that solves the need of the greatest number, not just the greatest number within this category.
So if we want to do prioritization, maybe we want to do a set of criteria that are the minimum application criteria, and then prioritize by ability to stay in the home without the support, and then maybe by income. Maybe that points to wanting to do a quarterly process or something like that, rather than rolling, because rolling is going to be difficult to prioritize.
Well, that's why I was saying to limit the time, like have a deadline.
I have a suggestion, because Beth is right. Why don't we do 2 programs? One that says staying in your home and accessibility, because you brought that up earlier. Why can't we fund 2? The accessibility one is all ages, and then the one in staying in your home could be more touted towards seniors. So we have a double impact, and we just determine how much money we need for both. To start with, it could be a low sum, and then based on the amount of requests we receive for either program, then it's easier for us to tweak, accessibility might need these adjustments, or staying in home or coming home might need these adjustments. So we are not limiting by age at all. We just have 2 separate programs, and we just have to determine how much money we want to give to both.
Well, that's what I was thinking, it's better, I'm sorry. That's what I was saying before. I think it's better to start off with 1 program to get our feet wet, as I
Sure,
said.
sure.
Because I think if we do 2, I'm not saying we're going to get overwhelmed with a bunch of applications, but we've never done this before. So I don't want to do all, 2 or 3 programs, because we have no idea.
If I
think
can
we should
throw in,
focus.
if I can throw in a little,
Whatever it may be, age or not. or
another
income.
thought as well, that probably would mean we would spend less time focusing on prioritization. One conversation I had with the senior center was they felt it wouldn't be difficult for them to kind of put together maybe a list of folks that they already know are in active need, and kind of they would, using kind of their own knowledge and resources, would sort of do the prioritization, and we could maybe operate like a pilot. So like maybe three or four projects as an option to sort of basically sort of test like a pilot.
Yes.
Because there are
Pilot's a
some
good
other
idea.
parts of this too that I don't want to overlook that will be a little bit tricky. And so that was one suggestion that we could pursue as well.
So my interest around pilot would be more around ensuring that we're getting the best bang for the buck. For example, the Smiths come to us and say, you know, the ability for my wife to stay at home, we need A, B, and C. And we say, okay, we think, you know, you meet all the criteria and all of the eligibility. So do the Smiths go find the individual that's going to install? Do we have a list of contractors that we recommend? Do we contract with the contractor? Which of the three allows for the best bang for the buck? Secondly, which one, we have to figure out how we're managing this. Anna has a full-time day job. We're a volunteer board, we all can lean in on this, but, you know, sometimes that doesn't always work. But are we getting a better bang for the buck if we say it's gonna be ABC Builders, XYZ Builders, and, you know, Acme Home Improvement, that are the three vendors? You go have them come out, they give a estimate, we approve one of them, they do the work, we cut the check to that company. Or is it you go find a price, or you have to get two prices, and then we determine the amount that we're providing? Those are some things that I think we can kind of work out the kinks if we are piloting, because there may be somebody that says, I really have this need, I don't know who to call, I don't know what
That's
to
the
do.
thing,
I know
that's
that-
the checks
I know
and
that
balances.
Bill was going to talk with Habitat for Humanity
Yeah.
about.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
And so one of us should probably take that on now.
No, I was going to work with him on it. We just never got time to sync. So
Okay.
I'm happy to take it up and, you know, give somebody a call and say, how do you guys do this with other
Yeah.
towns?
I would
How do
worry-
we have checks and balances though, too? That's what, when you're
Well, I
bringing
mean,
that up,
the-
Brian.
The other check and balance
That's
is
what I'm-
ensuring that it's been installed.
Well,
Somebody
that's what I
has to
mean.
sign
Well,
off.
who would that be? Our building inspector? Is, I mean, who is it?
Well, if there are
Say a
certain things
ramp.
like a ramp in front,
Yeah.
that's gonna require a permit.
Correct.
If it's a grab bar in the shower, it doesn't, but there's, I mean, we can solve for that in a short-term basis, but if this program grows and ends up becoming something bigger around like water heaters, furnaces, roofs, and others, there has to be a process to make sure that we're ensuring the
Compliance.
the compliance with what's being done, that it's being done in an effective manner, and guess what, it's, you know,
Yeah.
I'm giving you an example, let's just say this program expands to furnaces, and, you know, we've contracted with Maria's HVAC company, you come in and install it at somebody's home, and then 3 months later, it's not working correctly. Like, is the homeowner working with Maria, or are we working with Maria, what's our, or are we just writing the check?
And again, another proof point is, I want to make sure that this board or the community is not assuming a liability.
Correct.
You know, if we're recommending and we're sending out the contracts and we're paying the contractor, we could be sued by a homeowner for faulty work.
I would say the clearest way to do this is, here's some contractors that we recommended, and, I mean, there's some contractors in town that
Yeah.
we can obviously communicate with and say,
Yeah.
hey, the town's doing this, the Affordable Housing Trust is doing this because we see a need. You're a contractor in town, you know,
Request for
we've kind of,
proposal.
what?
We could do a
Yeah,
request for proposal
and
on
we've,
this.
we've kind of vetted you, but you're gonna work directly with Rich, who needs the ramp at the front of his house. We're gonna fund it, but actually, you know, we're gonna be writing the check either to whatever builder that they've,
Pick a builder, here's a database, and give us
or,
an estimate.
and we should probably talk to council on this, is it better to actually provide the grant to the individual, and they're paying for it? One way or the other, we need to have confirmation it's been done.
And if you pick up the contractors from other communities that Bill was going to do, you might see how they handle the
Correct.
legalese part of it.
So I wanted to go back to the comment briefly on the proposal of like, we know some people, we'd like to give them some money. I have like kind of a philosophical belief that if a program is a government program, it should be transparent, open, and open to everybody regardless of personal relationships. And so I would personally be more, like, I understand that it would be more work to do a throw things open, accept a cohort of applications, but I think that that would be a more appropriate way.
Well, I don't think anyone's saying that it wouldn't be transparent. I think what Anna is saying, that the Council on Aging know that group of people, those residents. We don't, unless you have a friend or neighbor, but I don't, maybe you don't. I think it's best, it is transparent.
But I think it has to be an application process. I am comfortable with
We're just trying
the
to get
Council on Aging
familiarity.
knows folks that they believe would be
Correct,
eligible for this.
exactly.
The fire department, the school department.
Absolutely.
You know your neighbor that you think this would be eligible, and make a recommendation. And even if it's that, even if it's the Council on Aging saying, here's the grant application that the Housing Trust has put together. And,
Exactly.
and by the way, we can also help you fill it out if this is a complex process. Hopefully, it's a simple application. What I wouldn't want is, to your point, Beth, here's Mr. and Mrs. Smith, let's give them dollars, because I think, it has to be transparent. It's for all or none.
Absolutely, it would be open
But,
to
but
all.
we, so, how about this for a compromise? I think we have to nail down both the eligibility requirements and how we're prioritizing within that. And then I think we open up the first grant round. And we look at it as, and I think you're on track, Beth, here, is maybe this is a quarterly process. It opens March 1st, awards will be made by March 31st, or, well, now let's say June 1st,
Yep.
June 31st, and we move forward. I think we would always have flexibility in the process if an emergency comes forward that this board or whoever process we set up to vet these, it's an obvious priority, it's an obvious emergency. But I think we open up that first quarterly application. We click down on what the eligibility and the priority will be in that process, and then what it is that we need to receive from them to prove eligibility. And you've given some examples here on the application process. I think when you talk with Habitat for Humanity, they can probably provide some input on that as well. Where I want to use our program partners, our Council on Aging, our Veterans Agent, our school nurses, our Board of Trade, and then the new program that Chief LaCosta's put in place at the fire department, which is the Retire the Fire program. I don't know if anybody's seen on social media, but the chief and the men and women in his department have been going into homes of individuals to help them assess, do you have a smoke detector, do you have a carbon monoxide detector? And if they don't, they're going through the property, they're putting them in there, they're getting it set up, and surprisingly, more often than you would think, they're going into homes, and guess what? There isn't a smoke detector, there isn't a carbon monoxide detector, opportunities for fire extinguishers and others. What we also have there is folks from the department are in a home and they're able to assess some potential need that they can recommend to that individual. Here's a program you may want to look at. If you need some help assessing the program, the Council on Aging, Veteran Services, the Affordable Housing Trust overall can help you with that. So I think we lay that out in the first quarter, and let's see if we build it and if they come. I think what we also have to say is, what is the amount we're going to allocate to that first test? Now, we can allocate dollars, let's just say for sake of conversation, we put $25,000 in, and we get 3 applications, and it's gonna be $1,200 total. We can reassess, did we put more money in, or we just roll that into the next quarter? Or do we expand it to something larger of
Expanded
items
services.
like other services?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, $30,000 would be 10% of our current cash on hand, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking 25 to 30 to see, this is what I was thinking. And, let's do the first quarter, see what we have, let's promote the heck out of this, use our use our different tentacles in town through the Council on Aging, the Board of Trade, all of those groups I've talked about, as identifying potential opportunities. But let's, tonight, can we nail down, like, the eligibility and priority to the process? I mean, I think first and foremost, you've listed here, for example, like individuals with disabilities or veterans or single head of households or individuals that aren't eligible for other services or other programs. Now, that's kind of hard because I don't want this board or this process to be the one that says, well, you should be eligible for this, go apply for that. Because I can't confirm they'll be eligible. However, if there's ways that we can braid other services to cover this, I think we can also be the clearinghouse for that. But I don't want, in the end, if the barrier to getting access in and around your home and being safe in your home is you don't know where else to apply, we're becoming the source of last resort. So can we get some unanimity around eligibility? And I actually think for opening this up for the first quarter, I would like to open the aperture wide. And then let's see what we get. If we get 9 applications and 9 of them are 65 and older, okay.
Yep.
If we get 9 applications and 8 of them are under 55, then we've struck a need. And then the next round may be exactly the same, or maybe we tweak it.
One thing with the income, using just income, is that is not going to determine needs for people who have wealth, right, versus people who are currently working. But I think it would be a reasonable first pass to use income as the prioritization factor.
Absolutely. I mean, how else would you do it?
And do we want to build in some flexibility if we see there's a real need here and they're on the edge?
I don't think this program is the right place to do that, right? Like, I don't know that do we think the subjective judgment of this board is the right way to do that?
Because right underneath there, it says that aren't eligible for other services too. That's the thing, is what you're saying. They'd be
I'm
eligible.
concerned about on the eligible for other
Other
services.
that's what
How do
I'm
we
saying.
determine, like, I think you may be eligible
Income
for
would be
this.
the first one.
But,
Income would determine that.
Well, I think there's the
You're not
challenge
eligible.
of the stories we've heard of people who are like, well, I'm eligible for this program, but it's going to take me 6 months and I don't want to wait 6 months.
What do you mean? What do you mean by this? Wait 6 months?
So like the VA programs are sometimes slow to come through with, like, yes, we've determined there's a need, but it's going to take us a while. And we don't know yet how long we're going to take. We might very well be one of these programs. Like, I don't think we have the capacity as a board to have the kind of flexibility that private charities do. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's actually what we want is, if there was a nonprofit in town that was doing this work, making a grant to support the work of a board that meets more than once a month, that has the flexibility to make their own prioritizations. Like, I'm concerned that with having this body be the group that's responsible for trying to make up for bureaucracy when we are part of the bureaucracy.
well, we'll always be part of, I mean,
It
it's
is
government,
what it
it's
is.
It is
bureaucracy.
government,
I
yeah.
Of course, we're not
I
gonna
think
get
we have to
around
get
that
through the
like
first
it's not.
quarter or the
Yeah.
first round
how it
and see
goes.
how this works. I mean, we may make a determination that here's a perfect example. We have a scholarship fund in town that my board appoints the individuals to the scholarship fund that students apply to every year. It's dollars that were given to the town years ago. We appoint 2 or 3, maybe 4 individuals in town that vet all the applications. The select board is not involved in it. We appoint the individuals. We may, after the first round of this, say, maybe that's the model we want to take, that we are appointing 3 or 4 volunteers. Maybe it's 1 member of this board and 2 anybody else in town that are actually the arbiters of reviewing these applications. That is, and somebody is checking off that, yes, they've met the eligibility, check. They are a priority population, check. And then from there, they review them all. I mean, it's not a bad problem to have that we have more applications than we have dollars, then we resource accordingly.
Yeah.
I just think it's hard to cover every base the first round. That's what I
Yeah,
think.
no,
I think we have to start
we will learn
somewhere.
things. We
and
will
it's a-
learn things.
And it's a learning curve, so you can't cover every situation. You just can't. It's our first round, and that's what you do. The government does it that way with all of their RFPs and their program announcements. They tweak it each round, and that's what we have to do. We can't cover everything and say, don't include this person, we can only worry about so many things, first foray out, otherwise we'll never do anything. Then we'll continue to kick the can to the next meeting, and the next meeting, and the next meeting.
So are we comfortable on eligibility that, obviously Middleton resident,
Yeah.
homeowner, or,
So the reason that I included homeowner on here is because I do think that we are in a better position to be able to make an agreement with a homeowner who has.
and the landlord?
Yeah.
Landlords also have
Yeah.
their own responsibilities, and we're not, I think.
Well, the landlord owns the building, so you can't really, tenants cannot.
Yeah, I just think just,
Construction.
yeah, for our sake,
And also
especially as a starting point.
Also homeowners, when you
that
say
we will be-
homeowner, that, being on the housing
Yeah.
authority, we have tenants that live in the homes here that are, the family unit or the one here at Orchard Circle. They can't bring someone like us in to do anything. That's completely so.
Right,
they're
and not to
homeowners.
say that
They're
there wouldn't
tenants
be
in
a need
sense.
for
Yeah.
renters
So
at
I-
all, but.
In the business that I do, I work in Medicaid and Medicare.
Yep.
Managed care, and Medicaid and Medicare for dual eligible sometimes will provide these services. It is very hard when it's a renter and not a
Absolutely,
homeowner.
absolutely.
Because there's all these other layers of bureaucracy of like, I gotta go get landlord approval,
Mm-hmm.
the landlord approval doesn't want this vendor come in, they only use this vendor.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're correct on the Middleton resident.
Absolutely.
Are we agreeable of using the HUD AMI limits for
I
this?
I think so,
Okay.
yes. What about the age? You skipped
And
over
then
that.
my recommendation, I mean, I don't think we have any 6-year-old homeowners, but I think it's homeowners or family members that are part of that home.
Okay.
So I think what you're saying is it's not renters. Let's put it this way, it's not renters. It may be a mother-in-law living with the daughter and son-in-law.
Direct relative.
Yeah, direct relative. So my recommendation is we don't have an age requirement on this first round, and then let's assess going forward.
So you're going to remove the 55?
So if we get a lot more applications and everybody is eligible, how do we recommend we want to provide guidance for priority? Is it individuals with a disability first? Now, that sounds great on paper, but who's certifying the disability?
Right.
How do we?
I'd want to see a doctor's letter.
Well, it's,
That could easily be
You know,
bought, though.
I think current income and using one criteria for the first round would make more sense than things that we're going to require documentation for, that we're going to need.
An
Yeah.
expert
That's something that
analysis.
we're already collecting the data for to ensure eligibility.
and again, I hope we get more applications than we expect. Well, not that I hope, but that's proof that there's a need, and then we will reassess round 2 if we need to invest more dollars. And then, I'll say this out loud, I don't have a problem in this board, not this year's town meeting, because our budget is basically set, but while the CPA has been very generous to us, if we see a need in this town, there's an argument that we could go to town meeting and ask for a direct appropriation. And this town is generous when there's need, and those are the arguments that we could make.
Yeah, the CPA, we had a meeting on Monday, and there wasn't a request from this group to that for this year. So,
I've made a request to Costa for this year,
for this year?
for this town meeting, yes.
Okay. So, was that the 80 grand?
Yeah.
That you had made? Okay. I think for next year, we need to determine how much we're gonna need. It's gonna be based on the pilot and what we see the needs are, because we're gonna have to keep a record of all the people who said no to, and see what those needs are. And then that should help shape the budget and the request to the CPA for the next year.
Yep, I agree.
So I think, while the 80,000 was a good number, we don't know if that was, or is gonna help say, this particular,
Yeah, I don't want us to be,
Activity.
I don't want us to be bringing dollars in from CPA and having it sit in an account and do nothing, just
Sure,
earning interest. Like, hey, interest is great, but I'm going to start utilizing some of these dollars. This committee doesn't have the budget nor the capabilities yet of doing something big. We're not there yet.
I think we have enough that we could do seed money, that we could help kick things off if we can identify some bigger impact
Yep,
priorities we'd like to see pursued.
yep, I agree.
That's where we can be.
So I think in the priority populations,
I'm
we're just
sorry.
going to look at income.
What about scope? You skipped over that. Are you going to get to that afterwards?
Yeah,
Which one are you looking at? The first one?
Yeah, so the
grab
scope, I
bars?
think, so let's talk more about scope. So we've been talking about accessibility, grab bars, handrails.
So that first-
Ramps. Now, should we also talk about, like, stair lifts, items like that?
Yeah.
Other safety features?
Yeah,
That's
safety
there.
features. Now, we have things here like activated lighting. Do we want to talk about, now, you've had, Anna, on this later on, some other items such as repairs that would be, I call it life and safety issues of whether or not an individual could stay at home, water heater, heating system, roof, electrical, plumbing, other items like that.
I mean, roof is not going to fit in this budget.
No, roof is not going to, we do one roof and that would be it. Same thing with the boiler or a furnace. But I'm thinking of items such as, like, it's great to put grab bars and handrails, but maybe it's more things like some minor plumbing work, like putting in a handheld shower head. It's the acquisition of a shower chair, items like that, that may fit more into the small space that we're doing here. But I think we have to also see what we can learn from the applicants.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe it's some interview or questionnaires we provide to the applicants, like, what are the other things that are your concern of your ability to stay in your home?
Wasn't that why Anna put,
Right.
I'm assuming that other safety features to kind of as a catch-all is, I'm assuming
Yeah.
that's why that's there,
Yeah.
because we won't know that if they need the grab bars and the shower head that you're talking about.
I
You
mean,
can't list every
I-
little
I
item.
remember when my grandmother came home and we installed certain things. We actually put like handrails in the hallway.
Oh, yeah, for
Very,
sure.
very commonly, as people's hearing gets worse, putting in alarms that flash instead of just make noise for fire alarms and such are,
So I think that'll all fall under other safety features.
I think so. And like you said, we would get that knowledge with what they put in.
Okay.
That's why I think it's a nice catch-all that Anna put in there as other safety features, kind of falls in line with what you're talking about.
So as we look at the application process here, obviously an ID, proof of income, it may be tax returns, it may be.
What's a
pays-
valid ID? A driver's license showing you're a resident?
It could be a valid ID that way, it could be, whatever proof of residency that you actually live here. Now, you also have proof of
I
ownership.
was gonna say, yeah, that,
Um, I mean,
but that doesn't say that you live in the house.
exactly, so,
ID
Driver's
does.
license with the
Should.
address should.
Yeah, should.
yeah, so it's
Or
probably
tax
not just like, hey,
Well,
I mean, somebody could actually, their home could be in their daughter's name, but they're living there.
That too, yeah.
That's also for our records to see exactly who we've
yeah.
given the grants to, keep track of
Correct,
that.
yep.
Yeah.
So, I don't think we need a credit history here. We're looking for small applications here. I think we probably have to provide, like, proof of income. I know you have here is like maybe recent bank statements or mortgage statements. I mean, yes, somebody could qualify based on income, but could have a lot more resources than just what their income is.
Well, your tax return.
So I think the tax return is probably enough. I don't,
Not if you own a couple million of property or whatever.
but
That's your
I don't-
tax return.
I think
You're
for
not
this,
escaping the tax man.
I think we will know. Let's be honest with you. I think we will know. I don't know if you guys disabuse me of this if I'm wrong. I don't think we need bank statements, but
The tax
So-
return
Tax
shows
return
everything.
is gonna
So
cover.
I really don't want to see tax returns for like grab bars. I mean, there should be a limit. If the project goes over 1,500 or whatever, then you require more evidence. But I think if it's just grab bars and a couple of things.
But we have to do something to
private.
confirm
Income.
that they're at 80% of AMI.
You have
Of
to.
HUD's AMI. So what is?
Oh, so I get
So
you.
what is the
Okay.
confirmation? I think,
I think
let's put it this way. If we have a senior that isn't filing an income tax filing, that means their income is so low that that's an easy determination.
Well,
Um,
also, they probably qualify for the earned income tax credit and aren't collecting it.
You have to have the return, there's no other way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think it's the tax return. I don't think we need bank statements or other statements like that. If we ever get into the bigger program, then,
Yeah, for now,
Yeah.
just agree, agree.
I think.
so valid ID, the proof of income, which will be the federal tax returns.
Yep.
And then, you know,
Proof of ownership,
and then proof of ownership that they're not actually in a rental.
exactly,
And
absolutely.
if they're living in a home that, maybe it's in a trust, maybe it's their daughter's home, it needs to be clear that there's ownership there that is saying, yes, this can be done here.
What about adding an optional document, which would be helpful? Doctor recommendation would be, so doctor's recommending grab bars, things like that. I'm dealing with that, with a family member that I'm trying to modify their living space and stuff, and doctor's letters could be helpful.
I don't think of grab bars as things that lots of people are trying to scam their way into, personally. And
It's a small ticket item, you mean?
it's a small ticket item, and they're just not, it's not like this increases the value of your house in some big way. It's not like you're flipping this for sales.
So what if somebody
If
comes in
somebody
and
is-
asks, what if somebody comes in and asks for, their biggest need is they have 7 steps into the front of their house and they want a
Ramp.
ramp. Now, some of this could be a built ramp. I mean, with my grandmother, we bought a modular ramp that was a lot cheaper that
Yeah.
afterwards we sold. So I think in a case like that, I agree with you, like, handrails, handheld shower, other items like that. I don't need a letter from Dr. Smith, but if we're gonna do a larger project within a
You
certain
mentioned the
amount,
chairlift.
yeah, a
Yes.
chairlift
That's
or
a
a
big-
ramp,
Yeah.
I think that's an issue.
Maybe that's something over $5,000 that we ask for, and under $5,000, we are less concerned with them going and getting a
Any
letter.
doctor's gonna give a letter, though.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
a doctor
true.
will,
That's-
but
that's-
you know what?
that's the other thing, is it's really a
But there's a reason why we're checking a box
Yeah, no
here.
doctor's gonna say no to their patient
Yeah.
on a mobile, they wouldn't, your doctor's not gonna say no.
But I,
But also, if you person's going to the doctor saying, could you just email me a letter saying that I need this, they're at least putting the effort in. It's not like,
True,
yeah, so I would say, doctor recommendation for an amount, I think you're right, 5,000, which would, you know, and I think there's certain things that, as we have the list of potential scope and services, now, some of it will say other safety features, and then on the other safety features, it's probably, like on ramps and other safety features, is probably an asterisk that says, for needs greater than $5,000, confirmation through physician certification of need will be required.
yeah, we don't need it on a grab bar or
Yeah.
the motion activated lights, things like that, that's so
So,
small.
program partners, we've talked about that via the veterans agent. So let's talk about how we want to handle this. Do we want to leave it to them to find the vendor? Do we want to find vendors that we can recommend to them? I think the cleanest and the clearest is they get prices, they provide the price to us. Once it's been installed, we cut the check.
I think that's true, but it would be nice to be able to have local construction people that could be facilitators.
Do we want to ask for 2 bids for the things as part of the application?
I couldn't hear that.
Do we want to ask for 2 bids?
I would say over a dollar amount.
Yeah, that's
You know, I don't want.
Over
if you need a
$500
$500 grab bag, I
I'm
don't
not
really
gonna
care.
get,
yeah.
Again,
Over,
a
if
dollar
it's more than
Well,
$500.
$2,000?
Yeah, anything over, so over $2,000,
I think $2,000 is reasonable.
So,
think
2
it will.
bids, under $2,000,
No bids.
yeah.
One.
If I'm installing.
So I
faucet,
think we have
just
to
call
work
the
to
one-
find,
one handy guy.
you know, some local businesses that may want to participate. What I don't want to be in the business of is saying, you must use ABC, XYZ, and Acme Construction.
Yeah.
You can give,
Yeah, we
everybody
could
gives
give, like, here's
recommendations.
some that you can call, and we've kind of pre-vetted, and we've told these companies, this is what the program entails, and this
Yep.
is for Middleton residents, you're a Middleton business.
I think that's
How do we want to
important
do
to
that pre-vetting program?
So,
We're not responsible for what happens, but, I mean, in anything, when you do referrals, even yourself, or anyone, you're supposed to give at least 3. So
Right. Well-
that gets you past any kind of issues.
Like, would we want to do an announcement on the website saying, companies interested in doing this kind of work, we are going to be producing a page on the website that includes this, please apply here
For these categories of.
for these
But we first
categories
want to go
on
back to
some.
Habitat and say, do you want to formally become part of Middleton?
Right,
and
that
offer
too.
these services?
yeah, so let's have a conversation with Habitat,
Yep.
and maybe what we find are there, you know, we may make the decision, we just go directly with Habitat. They come back and say, here's my need,
Right.
here's the bid, it's gonna be, you know, we think it's gonna be $750 to do these reels.
Be the cleanest for
We
a
write
once a
the
month
check to
board.
Habitat, Habitat has their vendor come in.
Yes.
And that's Herman, you're going to talk to
Yes.
them, Herman?
Now, if that isn't a possibility, then I think we go the next step of, hey, Habitat, who are the vendors you're using?
Yep.
Simultaneously, we can work through the Board of Trade, work through the assessor's office and see what businesses in town are registered for personal property.
Building inspector.
And the building inspector, who are some of the builders in town that we know are residents in town that we can reach out? And it may be a case of reaching out saying, would you like to be a part of this program?
Yep.
I think that's important to include our tradesmen that live in town. I mean,
Well, it's not
town
just
visit.
the tradesmen in town, it's also neighbors helping neighbors.
Well, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. That's the whole, my exact phrasing is to say people are residents in town that own businesses.
I
By the way,
think
under
Beth-
program partners, do we want to actually list the veterans agent?
Yes.
Yeah, the veterans agent needs to be a part of this, and I would recommend the schools as well. You know, more often than not, I mean, we have a program in town through dollars that were given to us from a foundation years ago where we support families during the holidays and Thanksgiving with food. We also support individuals during the winter with fuel assistance through this. And we get a lot of folks from the COA, from the veterans agent, but we actually get a lot of families that are recommended to us through the school department. They have a very good handle on need.
Yeah, they're right there.
Both school systems?
Yes, both. I would actually recommend Essex Tech,
Yeah.
and, I mean, here's a third option to look at is, you know, maybe in the future, we talk to Essex Tech about maybe there's a way with their
Perfect.
construction and carpentry program where they may be able to help on this as well.
Yep.
I like Beth's idea of having local contractors sign up.
That was my idea.
Oh, sorry, Maria.
Thank you, Herman. I'd like the credit for that, thank you.
I was trying to come up with
So if
the
any
actual
contractor
process.
locally hears me say that, they'll be nice to me when I'm, no, kidding.
No, but I think that's very
It's
valuable.
important of that, because your neighbors, you know,
Well, not just that, but if Habitat for Humanity can't do something and we have the expertise in town,
Yeah.
we should be able to leverage it.
Yep.
absolutely.
Right,
It's
versus
easier for someone who
saying no.
lives here
Yeah, I mean,
to work
Habitat
on a
may look
house
at this
here.
and say, this is kind of too small for us to
Yes.
lean
Yeah.
in.
Well, they may look at it saying, it's a foot in the door, and this could go down as a larger project going forward.
Yeah.
That's the way she made it sound when she presented to us
Yeah.
back at the beginning.
Yep.
Yeah.
We have to
And
start
then
somewhere.
once we get this stood up, we can talk about, like, the other grants, programs that we talked about. This
If
would
we
be
want to
one.
go bigger.
Yeah.
And those are the
Just
ones
start
that,
somewhere,
I mean,
right?
if we're putting a roof on and we're doing a
You get comfortable.
heating system or a heating upgrade or a plumbing upgrade is, you know, there's going to be a lien on your property for this,
Yep.
that, but if 5 to 7 years from now, you're still living in the property, we'll forgive it. You sell the property within that dollar at proceeds, comes back to the housing trust and gets you know, similar to the old CDBG dollars. So let's talk about funding. I think we talked about 30,000 as the first seed.
25 to 30, you said.
Yeah, I say we start at 30. We reassess after we do this first round, and determine if we want to roll this into future rounds. I mean, hey, we may blow through the 30,000 in the first round.
Yeah.
In which case, yeah.
And then we have to reassess what that means. Okay, so I think, yeah, go ahead.
So here's a question. If the projects that come in don't go to the 30,000, do we then roll that balance over to the next quarter plus
Yeah.
30,000?
Oh,
No,
I was not expecting, or I was assuming that if there is more money allocated in future quarters, that we will need to vote on that separately. This isn't signing us up for $120,000 a year for this.
No, no, agreed. But let's say we allocate some money this round. Then, let's say we have money left over and we say, okay, the second round, we want to put in 30,000 plus what we didn't spend in the previous quarter.
So I think,
I think this committee should, at subsequent meetings, could decide
Have a vote.
how to adjust it based upon our experience. If we, while the successful is for 15,000 in the first 3 months, maybe we do want to put more money into
I
it.
think we have to see.
let's say round one, we get $15,000 worth of requests, and we decide all 15 are worthy of being funded, and there's 15,000 remaining. My recommendation is we roll the 15,000 to the next, but all of a sudden, we get 65,000 worth of applications. This committee can have a thoughtful discussion, should we supplement that, or only do 15,000, and then see what, you know.
I mean, personally, I don't think that this should be 100% of the work that this group does, this trust does, so.
But as I said from day
What do you
one,
mean,
we
100%
have to
of the
get,
work?
Like if
I
we're
want some
spending
small wins
$300,000.
here
Oh, no, no.
to be able to show both to
That's a lot.
town meeting that has been funding this, but also that we have the capability of actually doing things that are gonna be small in the beginning
And
and then
meaningful.
bigger in the later. I mean, at some point, if we're gonna do something substantial in town, housing related, whether it's something in partnership or we're funding, even seed dollars, we're gonna have to make a pretty clear argument to town meeting for those dollars. You know, our ability to apply for grants right now probably aren't gonna be great.
Yeah.
So, and this is a small amount of money doing good for folks in town. So I view this as a really good start, but the Affordable Housing Trust is not gonna be a grant program to continue to keep people in their homes. We have to now figure out how we segue to a program that actually allows more affordability in town. So, you know, apartments, housing, et cetera.
For my model, thinking that this probably wouldn't actually hit until FY '26.
What?
First, spending the 30,000, I don't think we'll have enough time the rest of '25.
I actually think we can get this kicked off by the fall. Well, when you say FY '26, you mean after July?
Yeah.
Not calendar '26?
No, no, no.
No.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I
Fiscal.
think we can actually have this pretty well nailed down, you know, by the summer, and then roll out the grant.
Yep.
So here's my recommendation going forward. Let me work with, I think Anna and I have enough here that her and I can work together to refine this down to, from really good bullets that you got us started, Anna, to turn this into a little bit of a narrative that we can start thinking about what the application looks like. I would like to bring to our next meeting.
And Herman might have that information from,
Herman,
for, yeah,
will do your magic on the,
Habitat.
on the habitat. I think at the next meeting, the decisions that have to be made is who's doing the work? Is it Habitat? Is it, do we talk to Essex Tech? Do we also bring in local contractors? And then figure out how we lock them into the program? And then I would say the meeting after that is when we get to brass tacks and finalize with the application, and then figure out how we roll this out. How are we communicating it? Who are the partners that are going to do it? You know, are there, do we ask for
Well, we have to
schools to
develop a
send
temp-
out flyers, the
We- yeah,
Council
we
on
have to do
Aging in their
templates.
newsletter, veterans in their outreach, you know, and figure out how we can wide and broadly communicate this. And then at that meeting, when we lock down this final application, is once we drop the grant application, how long till submit? What is the process to award? I want this to be timely but efficient. I don't want this to be a 3-month application project.
The other place where we can discuss it is at the town meeting. See if we can get a little 5-minute, you know,
So town meeting will probably give us a little bit of time. If I had to guess, the moderator would probably give me about a minute and
Sure.
30 seconds, but there's nothing that says, hopefully, we may not have that by town meeting, but maybe we have a flyer that we can provide at town meeting when people are checking in saying, did you know the Affordable Housing Trust is creating this grant program to assist people with this, and that? Please pay attention to the upcoming website. More information will be coming this summer.
Can you put that, something like a flyer in with the warrant, or is that not allowed?
I think it'll be something that we could have handed out when town
But it
meeting.
can't come in the mail?
No, it wouldn't, our warrant said it's ready to go to the mail. It's
Okay.
ready to be printed.
Okay. I don't mean as inside it, I just, well, it just comes as a note, it doesn't come in an envelope now I think
it's a
about it.
flat.
I was just thinking about it, it's just, yeah, just a booklet that comes in the mail, not inside an envelope that you
mean,
could
the-
insert something like the census.
The greatest folks between the groups, we talked about the COA, veterans, schools, and others, it's gonna be our town meeting attendees that are gonna, and actually, you know what? In addition to veterans agents, schools, let's also include the library. As ways to promote this.
I was also going to suggest Board of Health, but because of HIPAA, I'm not sure how that is going to be impacted.
Well, Board of Health is
And
like
they would
fire.
Send it to other people. They
Right,
wouldn't tell
right.
us about people.
Yeah.
They would tell
That's
people
right.
about us.
Yeah.
Sure.
Correct.
So-
Exactly,
Yeah, okay.
There's no,
So I wanted to correct what I said earlier. So a request was made from the Affordable Housing Trust for 2025 FY. But from the CPA for FY '26, there's been no request yet from this group.
We'll fix that.
I'll speak to,
Right.
I'll speak to your chairman again. I thought that request,
I thought you did
I
it the
actually have
last
the
meeting.
budget thing right here. You can have a look
Oh.
for FY '25. FY '26.
You just wrote it in, Brian?
Perfect.
I'll.
Initial that,
I'll make
Herman.
yet another formal request to our chairman extraordinaire of CPA.
Yes. Perfect.
Okay, so I don't think we need a motion on this yet. I think what I would ask at our next meeting, when we get this, Anna and I get this to more brass tacks, we'll probably be looking for a motion to both engage the process and then some of the decisions that have to be made, and then finally the 30,000. But I think we are in vehement agreement here.
Yep.
Yeah, but may I ask, Brian, when you were talking, Herman's going to talk to the Habitat, you mentioned the Board of Trade, should we be talking to
No,
that?
I think at the same time, we also have to
Yeah,
have.
you have to have that answer,
I think
too.
unless you come back with the Board of Habitat and they say, we can do this and we'll do it for free. But I think we also have to look for other alternatives.
Sure.
That's what I mean.
So, I mean, I think the Board of Trade is one way. I think it's it's really, I'll speak to the building commissioner as
Okay.
well and ask him about, who are the builders in town? And I'd gladly be the one to make a round of
I was
calls
gonna
to
ask
see,
about
hey,
that.
would you
Okay.
like to be a part of this? This is what we would expect. Like, when somebody calls and says they're submitting an application, can you please timely give them a timely price?
Right. That's why I want to ask that, if Herman's going to do the Habitat, if they say no, then we
Yeah.
don't want to wait another month.
Yeah, we don't have to wait another 2
Another month
months.
is
Yeah,
what
I
I'm saying.
agree.
Okay.
Who's going to talk to Essex Tech?
I'll reach out to Essex Tech as well.
Okay.
So I'll do Essex Tech, the building commissioner, and then if need be, the Board of Trade.
Because if we could tie it into the projects that they do, gives them credit, right?
I will say, the timeliness of Essex Tech doing work is hard, like,
Sure.
because they have a lot of towns, and they do a lot of work for municipalities, like at municipal projects and so forth, but this may be something that, I'll ask if they're interested, if not, we move to Plan C and D.
I just don't want to have another month delay
Yep,
for
I agree.
every answer.
Okay. So, Anna, you and I will find a time that works, squirrel, and kind of turn this into more of a narrative.
Yep.
And then, when you speak to Habitat, see if they actually have an application that they use. And if they have an application,
Yeah, that'd be a good start.
what do they say? Stealing something is the sincerest form of flattery. I'd be glad to.
Imitation, what is it?
Yeah, imitation is the
Yep.
sincerest form of flattery, so let's not reinvent the wheel if need be.
Correct.
And then we also have to figure out who is the clearinghouse for this. It's gonna be sent to the town, and we have to ensure, because there is, personally, identifiable information on this. If there's tax returns, there's information we have to treat accordingly. And these applications are going to be public documents, so certain things will have to be redacted. So we just have to be cognizant of that.
You have to go to town administrator's office.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Anna. You have really gotten us on a good start here. So, Richard, treasurer's update.
All right, so in the lower section of this front page, the lighter blue, I've updated to month 7, which is the month of January. And just for the summary for the year, we started off the first of the year at $210,247. We received CPC money of $80,000, and we've earned interest to date of $9,595. So our actual holdings at the end of January was $299,843.
Well, actually, $842.81. Okay. And thank you too for your, I know you have a 5-year projection on the back, assuming that CPA continues to be as magnanimous as possible. And then, once we start the grant program, we probably want to take the 30,000, if that's the number that we approve, and then start to model that out.
Yeah, I'll put that on my next version.
Okay. Any questions on the treasurer's report?
No.
Okay, are there any other items for future agenda?
So another thing that I think Bill had been taking lead on was talking to the library about the Library of Things.
Library of Things,
Happy
yes.
to pick that
Oh,
up.
yeah.
So if you want to take that, that would be great. And I think, once we understand the Library of Things, I think that's another thing that we can probably move pretty quickly on and ensure that we can get that moving sooner than later.
Sounds good.
Speaking of which, would we consider on the repair program, if somebody has somebody who would do the work for them, and all that we need to do is
The materials?
materials?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean,
well, the library of things with tools.
Right.
yep,
That was part of the goal of
Yeah,
that, is that
exactly.
we can make sure that there's a baseline of access that's available.
That is a genius idea. Because.
he's a genius.
Because it reduces the initial cost of the project.
Yeah.
By just applying the materials. We just have to make sure it's built to code.
Absolutely. They have to file the permitting
Yeah,
process.
that
and-
there would be a
Correct.
permit that would be required otherwise, and it's kind of hard to get money from the town to do a project and not pull a permit.
Well, no. What I mean is, you don't wanna have the project completed, and then, so we have to find out, as they're going through the process, are they certified, and are they gonna build it to code? Because
Correct.
building a permit is one thing, but then they build it, and then the building inspector comes in and goes, there's no foundation on any of this. This will sink into the ground in the first snowfall. So the question about providing just the materials, we need to have some sort of evidence that they can do the job.
Yeah, they've got to certify they will comply with the town code.
Yep.
Don't do in-process inspections and everything else.
Yep, I agree with that. And
But if
then,
it's just installing like a flashing light or something.
Agreed.
Those
Yes.
are things that you wouldn't pull a permit for anyhow,
so,
potentially.
Back to the dollar amount.
Yeah.
let's also, and I know we talked about the scope of what the services are, but let's try to be exhaustive of what some of those other safety features could be. Just so when folks are looking at the application, I don't want this to be a Christmas list of let's check everything
Yeah.
off on the service merchandise catalog. If you were a kid, you'll remember, Anna, you'd have no idea what that is, but when we were a kid, we checked off in the service merchandise catalog what we wanted.
I know what you're talking about.
Or it was the Sears and Roebuck
S&H
catalog.
green stamps.
Yeah, exactly. But
I do
it
remember
would be
green
helpful for
stamps.
folks to understand, like, when we say other safety features, what does that mean?
Right.
So I'll give you an example. It could be people with low vision. They have too many dangerous things around that they can't really tell it's really dangerous, right?
Well, it could be to what Beth said is not just a smoke detector, but if they are hard of hearing, a smoke detector that has flashing lights. Not all smoke detectors and carbon monoxide has that. Maybe it's items like that. It's security cameras that are allowing them to know who's at the front door rather than not being able to get to the front door. Things like that that could,
I mean, I've seen taking cabinet doors off cabinets so that you don't have to deal with opening cabinet doors to get to
Yes.
stuff.
changing doorknobs to handles that
Correct.
are for individuals. So those are the other features that, we won't have to have the fully exhaustive list, just so folks can say, those are the things that.
Examples, just maybe some examples under it or something.
Okay, and then at a future meeting, we're gonna have to confirm a process of how we determine when the dollars are cut that the project's been complete.
Maybe
gonna
the
require-
building inspector has some, maybe the building inspector
Well,
would
I mean,
have
if there's
some
something that
ideas
doesn't
on that.
require the building inspector, like the installation of a grab bar,
It
you know,
doesn't.
the building inspector's not gonna go out and inspect something without a permit. If it's a ramp, the building inspector's gonna be confirming that that's done, or his local inspectors will do it. But I think there has to be, you know,
Checks and
you've got
balances,
your
yeah.
grant, you have to show us that it's done, we'll cut the check.
Mm-hmm,
Check's not being cut until it's confirmed it's done.
Mm-hmm.
So let's think about that at the future meeting of how we confirm that. And,
That just raised a question for me, actually, of an upfront versus a reimbursement opportunity, which is probably another thing that we might need to consider.
okay.
Yeah.
Or you do a portion up front.
Yeah.
and
But
On
I do think
completion.
that that would be,
But trying to.
one thing I'll say too is there's a group of
Small.
staff at town hall who were involved in sort of some conversations about this, so hopefully, all of the work would not fall to just this group. There is a group at town hall who would be able to share some of these responsibilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you gonna require pictures of bigger projects?
I think we have to talk about, I mean, if we move to bigger projects, it's gonna be a lot more. I mean, I don't need somebody to go to the person's home and
No.
see the
No.
guardrail, the handrail in the shower, but
The pictures are very low lift.
Yeah.
That's not a very hard thing.
let's not over-engineer this.
Sure,
Let's
sure.
make this simple, but
Yeah.
reasonable and effective. And if we do that, we
And
build it,
if
people will
Habitat
come.
wants to participate, we probably get a lot of these answers.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay. Any other items for future agendas? As always, a week before we post the agenda, or a few days before, there's something that you want on this agenda, please let me know.
Okay.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
7:30.